when working in space, you must be as efficient as possible. You cannot waste any resources, not because you care about, obviously you care about the environment, but that's not the main reasons, because you can imagine that if we're going to emit carbon dioxide on the moon, like for every kilogram of carbon, it's like $1 million wasted.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel, and in media partnership with CTech. Hello and welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. Today we're talking to Jonathan Geifman, co-founder and CEO of Helios. Jonathan Geifman, born and raised in Tel Aviv, Israel, is married to Adi and the father to Dean. He spent nearly a decade in the Israeli Armed Forces, and he co-founded a product design studio that operates in the United States, and in the past 5 years is pursuing a childhood dream to enable the expansion of humanity beyond Earth with his company Helios, which we're going to hear about right now. Welcome, Jonathan.
Jonathan Geifman, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You know, usually I ask where the person is calling from, which city, which country. I think here, the more relevant question to this talk is we're both talking from planet Earth. Yet what you're usually concerned with is what's happening outside of planet Earth. And so I think that's a much more suitable question for this conversation. Jonathan, with Project Helios, you're working on something that I think, very, very few people get the privilege to entertain themselves with these questions in the day-to-day. You're really thinking about the future. You're thinking about, the greater perspectives of what needs to happen, with humanity and what's happening around the galaxy above us and around us. And I'm excited to understand a little bit better, where this comes from and what Project Helios really is about. So maybe we can get started a little bit with you and tell me, a little bit about your background and how you found yourself asking the question of space.
Yes, so actually my official background has nothing to do with space, if to be honest.
Yeah,
I spent nearly a decade in the Israeli Defense Forces, Armed Forces. But space was always a passion of mine in general. And just to give an example, my grandmother died 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago. And after, we needed to evacuate their apartment and everything. And my aunt, she found a drawing that I made when I was 6. It was a drawing of like a very small Earth, a bigger moon, and like rockets and astronauts and everything. So you can see from early on, yes, that was a real passion of mine. And about 5 years ago, I decided to pursue this passion. And I had this, I don't know, you can say it's a crazy idea of looking into what technologies are missing or required in order for humanity to be able to establish permanent infrastructure on the moon, Mars, and eventually beyond. So yeah, this is how it started.
Sounds like a very simple mission statement, but where does this, so take me a little bit through the pain problem, just like with any traditional pitch. Why is this even a question that is relevant to be asked? And why is now, as we approach 2022, why is this the right time to be asking this question?
Yeah, actually, if you were asking me this about 5 years ago, it would be harder for me to answer. But today it's easier because there's a lot of hype around the space industry in general. And in these last 2 years, 3 years, there's a lot of movement, a lot of drive to go back to the moon. We see it with NASA's Artemis program, collaborating with additional 12 space agencies from different countries. And this time, in opposed to what was 50 years ago when they just, planted a flag and went back to Earth, this time the goal is to establish a permanent base, a permanent infrastructure, so we can have a continuous astronaut presence on the moon. Just by the way, like we have continuous astronaut presence in the International Space Station for more than 20 years now, straight. So it's the same concept, just to do this on the moon. Now, one of the main challenges of doing this is the extraordinary cost of sending anything from Earth to the moon. I mean, today it is quoted at more than like $1 million per kilogram, per 2 pounds.
Wow.
That you can imagine. Yeah, that's very expensive, and you can imagine that like a permanent base will weigh a lot. I mean, probably hundreds of tons, and that is just the permanent infrastructure. Then you have consumables that you need like to replenish, and you need all the time. And then we realized when digging into this that the most sought after consumable by far, by a lot, is going to be oxygen, and not to breathe. Not for breathing. Breathing is peanuts, but as part of the rocket propellant. Okay, and just to give you,
Interesting.
yes, an idea, like a sense of how much oxygen is needed, because this is quite mind-boggling. Even for people from the space industry, most don't really know this. Only people who usually actually deal with rockets and rocket engines know this. But like if you take Starship, okay, SpaceX's flagship project, and in this case, according to the known data today, when it is fully loaded, only the upper part, the part that will land on the moon and Mars, etc., when fully loaded with the weight of the vehicle itself, cargo, astronauts, propellant, everything, it is expected to weigh something like 1,400 tons.
Wow.
Out of that weight, nearly 1,000 tons is just oxygen to burn the propellant. It's like something like 900 tons of that. So it's like 65% of the total mass, something like that. And this ratio is
Interesting.
yes, it's pretty much true to any other space vehicle that will be involved in these endeavors. And yeah, so there's no way around it. If we want to make this whole project, as humanity, want to make this sustainable and actually do it in the long run and be able then to go onward to Mars, etc., we must be able to produce that oxygen, to source it on site, on the moon or on Mars, etc. Yeah, so this is like the why to do this.
So now the question stems, first of all, I think that an important question that I want to know is how come I haven't heard about this yet? Right? I mean, I consider myself, I listen to things. I'm also interested in space. Is this something that is like really well known around the world, or is this something that only a few people are really digging their nails into? Because I'm trying to figure out also, if this is such a huge problem, why aren't we seeing headlines about this and seeing a bunch of companies trying to go and tackle it?
No, so there are a bunch of companies that going about and try to tackle it around the world, mainly in the US. But you're right. I mean, it's in the beginning. We're in the beginning. The main issues today are to get to the moon. That's like the first step. So you have the launchers, then you have the lunar landers. You need communication, you need energy, you need a lot of stuff. And as we see it, some of these technologies that I just mentioned are not fully matured yet, but they are about to be, and there are like well-funded companies that are pursuing them. And the next step that is not, as we think, sufficiently pursued is the technologies. It's not only our technology, it's like a whole range of technologies that revolve extraction, utilization, storage, usage of resources on site. And there is like it's a niche industry in the space industry that's NASA calls them. NASA calls that area ISRU, in situ resource utilization. I guess that in a few years it will be a well-known acronym, but today it's only the beginning. And yeah, so you're right. You should have been heard about it, but we're not there yet.
Well, so tell me about Project Helios and what is actually, tangibly happening there. You've been there for a few years now, running this organization and company. Tell me a little bit about, the vision, where you see yourself and where you're at now.
Yes, so our vision is not only for space. We realized this early on that several things. First, that this is a marathon. It's a long road to get to commercialization. And we don't want to rely on government grants, which currently we work with, or investors' money, which we all also work with today. But we don't want to rely on
Mm-hmm.
these for in the long run because it might take 10 years, it might take more. Even if we do everything perfectly and our technology is amazing and works and everything, even then, in order to commercialize this technology, we need someone to actually buy that oxygen. We need
Right.
to have like communication services to Earth, excavation, storage, energy, like a whole set, a whole value chain of technologies need to come to be realized, in the future, just for our little link in that chain to be profitable. So it's a long road, and realize that if we want to make it happen, we must be able to create a sustainable business in the shorter term. And here comes like, how do you utilize these technologies here on Earth? Okay, way before you're going to do them in space, on the moon or Mars. And then it struck us that, yeah, that these technologies in general to utilize resources in space might have a tremendous effect here on Earth in terms of the environment. Because
Mm-hmm.
by nature, when working in space, you must be as efficient as possible. You cannot waste any resources, not because you care about, I mean, obviously you care about the environment, but that's not the main reasons. Because you can imagine that if we're going to emit carbon dioxide on the moon, like for every kilogram of carbon, it's like $1 million wasted because we had to bring that kilogram from Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So the way, I mean, the trajectory of these technologies is to be extremely efficient, no waste. So yeah, so this is part of our vision as well. I mean, to create a sustainable human life on Earth and beyond. And it's also part of our developments of our technologies.
So from what I'm understanding, you're mainly right now working on utilizing these resources here on Earth, but a similar technology can then be used to extract and utilize those resources in space, correct?
Yes, yes. So there are two main projects that we have currently that we're working on. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the first one actually we haven't made it public yet, so I'll make it public now. Is that first? I mean, the first project is to use technologies, these technologies on the moon to produce oxygen from the lunar soil. Okay, or as we call it, lunar
Okay.
regolith. Regolith is like the more professional, broader term for soil, sand, loose gravel, and everything. The lunar regolith is made of over 40% oxygen by mass. That oxygen is chemically connected to minerals and oxides. And we have a process that know how
Mm-hmm.
to separate it without using consumables, carbon, and stuff like that. And the other project that is derived from this our research is to produce iron and steel here on Earth, for Earth, I mean, for the steel industry, in a manner that is more energy efficient and with zero direct carbon emissions. Okay. And
Wow.
that's actually pretty big because the steel industry is one of the most pollutive and carbon emitting industries in the world by
I'm
far.
sure.
It's like nearly 10% of all worldwide carbon emissions is just from the steel industry. And finding
Wow.
an alternative method to produce steel with less carbon emissions, or even maybe zero carbon emissions, then that's like a big it's a big issue. And this is something we're pursuing as well. And that's actually it's a we just about 2 months ago started working on a dialogue with the steel industry. At the moment, we're hopefully this is something we'll be able to give more details about in the coming months. But it's very exciting.
Incredible. So, how do you, as a leader, then, think through such a great vision? Because on one hand, you're balancing both the research and development here on Earth. At the same time, you're also having to think about, okay, how is space exploration going to change? What kind of partnerships you have to do? What kind of, different bodies that are large and bureaucratic you have to start communicating with, so that you can start planning, a few years down the line. This is not, a design partnership for a few months. You actually have to think, really long term. How do you go and think about that yourself?
Yeah, even though I'm not an engineer, in like officially, I think
Mm-hmm.
I think that the way we approach it is thinking of it as like an engineering problem. Okay, it's a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
it's something that we want to accomplish. Okay, a technology we want to deploy, or a business model we want to achieve, and it has many different interfaces. Okay, technologically
Mm-hmm.
with other companies, regulation, legal issues, um, financing, and you just like dissecting and this problem into different to its different aspects and different issues, and try to
Right.
solve everything and do it as simplified as possible. That's also an important aspect, to try and simplify. This it might sound complicated already, so we're trying to simplify everything, simplify processes, not only technologically but in general, right? On all aspect. And I'll quote Elon Musk now: "The best process is no process, and the best design is no design." If you can simplify and eliminate unnecessary parts, that's better. That's the approach.
So take me back a little bit to your childhood. Looking back, what really were you fascinated by as a kid? If you had to look back in elementary and middle school, what really got you going?
How things work. That's it. Yes. If I have to sum it, my mother, she was mad at me a lot. She wasn't mad at me, but I used to like disassemble everything at home since I was very little, and trying to reassemble them, not always successfully. Uh, like every home appliance you can think of, from the vacuum cleaner to the television. And trying to understand how things work. That's fascinated me back then and also today. Just, I don't know.
Amazing.
I'm really bothered if I
And
don't understand how something works.
I love it. And so, if today, obviously, I'm sure that it's not hard to gain inspiration from the vertical that you're in. But where do you personally, get your inspiration in the day to day, whether professionally or personally?
Wow, from many different directions. Science fiction. Um, I have several, podcasts that I really like to listen to. Uh, one, I'd even call him a role model, and it's probably, I have many role models, from the obvious ones, like, I don't know, Elon Musk, and maybe Peter Thiel, and more, but maybe the less conventional ones would be even Joe Rogan, which I'm really fascinated how he, uh, absorbs new ideas and has such an open mind
Hmm.
to all kind of different voices. It's also an inspiration. Also for my son, who is 1.5 years old. And it just, just the thought of what he will have in the future, what will be in the future for him, that excites me. And so it's also something that
Amazing.
I like
And if I had
thinking
to
about
ask you for a
a
few
lot.
words that you would use to describe yourself,
Yeah.
what would those be?
Um, wow, that would be hard. Um, the first thing that comes to mind, that would
Okay.
be unflappable. Um, it's really hard to annoy me. Like you need to try really hard. So I'm pretty
Okay.
unflappable. Um, Maybe creative,
I
I
can definitely
think,
see that.
and driven. I'm very driven. Like Helios is going to work. Helios is going to work.
I
I
love it.
mean,
I love
it will
it.
fail over my
Jonathan, really
dead
thank
body.
you
Let's say
for
it
the
like
time
this.
and for the amazing insights and this conversation just makes you want
Yeah,
us to go and dive way deeper into what you're doing and understand
sure.
this whole world a little bit better and the statistics that you even mentioned in the beginning just blew my mind, and I keep thinking through the inefficiencies that are there and the amazing opportunities there is for innovation, both from a green tech place but also just from a financial place to allow for more space exploration and to democratize it. So thank you very, very much, and stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you for everything.